Today will be a review of the Ifi Valkyrie, and I will be focusing mainly on the usage of this device, how does it compare, the sound quality, and is it worth it, right? So let's not waste time and go straight into it. I will not be showing the box, by the way. I'll just show you the box for a short moment. The box was really good. It comes with a wooden case, and I think this wooden case is just really awesome, and it comes with a carrying case inside too. So pretty much I think that's all I feel like showing. A lot of the power, the cables are all in there, but nothing that will blow your mind. The only thing that is very impressive about the packaging is the box itself. So going back to the device, now this is a DAC amp. It does produce a lot of power. They rate it as more than 2 watts of power at 64 ohm with a max power of 5 watt plus in 32 ohms. Don't ask me why they use different measurements. It's just how the spec sheets was written itself. Just note that 2 watts of power is still a lot of power. You can run most planar headphones with it. I have run Noah X, the Ner Audios, whatever. With it, it works out perfectly fine. Now this device is a transportable rather than I'll say as a desktop device because it does have built-in battery. You can use it as a portable, it's just a little bit big. So it depends on your preference whether are you willing to carry such device around. Now there are some interesting ports. You do have USB-C, 2 of them, one to charge and one to use as a data. This is a coaxial plus optical. This is the RCA out. Then this is a line out, but it does take in consideration the whatever modifications you have in the device. And then these are the pure line outs, which is not affected by volume itself. And then if you look at the front here, there is a 4.4 standard output here. And then there's some buttons to change the modes, the input modes, and some setting in terms of filters. And then if you look at the up here, there is 2 buttons here. One is to control the gain, one is to control some functions, which I have to show you after I on the device. And to on the device, you can look at the volume knob here. By the way, it's a nice volume knob with very clicky. The only thing I don't like is that it doesn't have absolute volume. So you have to see the screen to know how loud it is. I do prefer some absolute volume at times. But to on it is very simple. Just press and hold and you will on it. And when you on it, you'll see a little screen light up and then you'll see numbers coming up. You see the battery. So, it is a transportable. You see, I'm not plugging anything and it does run up very well. You can turn the knob to increase and decrease the volume. And then to change the gain is to press this. You can see fire sign, which is turbo, and lightning sign, which is nitro. Don't ask me why is it like that. Why don't they just write low, medium, high? I guess that's too normal. But that's how Ifi uses it for their gain. Now, there are some functions, as I said. There's X space, which actually can be shown in the front and also the top. X space is about expanding the sound itself, increasing the sound stage and the size of the sound. I don't use it, that's one thing. Now, the other one is, of course, X bass, and X bass just increase the bass. Very easy to understand. Then there's also X presence, which kind of boosts the upper end of the vocals to make it even more crisp and clear. And then you can on both of them to give you like a VW kind of sound signature, right? Now it shows on the screen here. It also shows on the front. If you do press it, you'll see some LEDs light up to let you know what is the setting itself. I think usage-wise, it's very simple. There is still one more thing at the bottom, and that's I use the IE Match. Now, I don't use this, so no opinions on that. Overall, I think it's a very simple to use device. No rocket science to it. It's a DAC amp. Plug a USB in, and you're ready to use the device itself. Overall feel is just really nice too. Now, before I go into the sound quality, I'd like to thank Ifi for providing me this set. It's a loaner set. I may have to return it depending. I'm still thinking whether should I get it or not. But yes, they were kind enough to ship me this copy here to try out, and so far I'm loving it. That's the reason why I write a full review. So without wasting time, let's talk about the sound quality itself. DAC amps are kind of like dongles glorified, Dongles are also DAC amps. I would just say that the Ifi as a DAC amp is a pretty good device. The sound quality wise, if I were just talking about compared to whatever I heard so far, this is a bit on a larger sound side. It is very dynamic, good amount of energy, very clear, one of the clearer ones. And also I would say as if you are looking for a good balance DAC amp with large soundstage and generally good amount of power, however not as focused for vocals, this is it. It does give you pretty good sound quality overall. Now, it's very hard to talk about sound quality of such a device alone, so let's put in perspective. This is the W2 Ultra, one of the high-powered dongles you can get in the market. Pretty expensive if you ask me. Now, this device here, I would say, as if you compare the Ifi Valkyrie, it sounds very flat. This sounds really, really flat versus the Ifi Valkyrie. The Ifi Valkyrie just is way more exciting, way more dynamic, and also I think that it has a touch better clarity and a slightly bigger soundstage. The vocals are not as focused as the W2 Ultra, but it has good amount of energy spread out for the vocals. I do like the Ifi Valkyrie sound more than W2 because W2 just feels, I guess, very boring. If you ask me, it's very competent, but it's very boring. Now, just to note that if I was to use IEM, they actually sound pretty similar with a slight improvement in terms of the soundstage and a slight improvement in dynamics, but very slight, not significant. However, if I was to use a headphone like the Nova X, the difference is huge. It's huge. So just to note that the Ifi Valkyrie, if you drive headphones, is better than a dongle, and this is one of the better ones. Now let's compare it to DAPs because they are the only other sources I have today. Compared to my Lotoo Go Touch, the Lotoo Go Touch is very focused, very powerful in the middle, while the Ifi is not the case. It is a bit more spread out, it's a bit wider, the vocals are also a bit wider, and it's not as aggressive in the center itself. What it does mean is that if I was to listen to certain female vocals on the Lotoo Go Touch, depending on the headphone, it is a little bit more aggressive, and it can also be a little bit more shouty, a little bit more sibilant on certain headphones, right? While the Ifi itself will feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit bigger, still have good amount of energy there, but just not as aggressive in the center itself. Now, it is dependent on headphones because something like the NER Harmonia is very sensitive to sibilant and shoutiness, and the Ifi tames it a little bit more. If I was to use the Lotoo Go Touch, I find that it is a little bit too much energy there. So the Ifi Valkyrie is better for that. But if I was to compare to something like the Noah, I would say as between the Ifi Valkyrie and the Lotoo Go Touch, the only improvement is actually the soundstage. It looks and sounds bigger on the Ifi Valkyrie, but the focus itself is a personal preference. I can live with either one for the Noah X. Now with the M9, the only parameter that is very different is clarity. The M9 itself has this very big, warm, I'll say, big and warm signature, right? And with that said, I find that with the Ifi Valkyrie, if you put it side by side, it just have this improvement in clarity that the M9 doesn't have. Yeah, in terms of soundstage, everything, I'll say it's maybe slightly bigger here. Not a huge improvement, but the clarity is really significant and noticeable. Now, the M9 Plus has always been known that if you drive it with an external amplifier, normally it sounds great. It's just the internal amplifier goes for this slightly warmish tuning. I guess that is a personal preference there. And I quite like it if I was playing something like the HE1000, which is a bit more on the cooler side. So that is it when it comes to compare to other DAC amp sources that I have. Overall, you can see that the Ifi is a pretty good DAC amp, better than dongles, better than actually most DAPs too, slightly better in some parameters that is easy to notice. I mean, there are probably some other things that I cannot hear. I mean, I don't have the most golden ears here, so I find that the Valkyrie is pretty good, at least to my liking itself. The Ifi also works as a line out. As I said, you can actually line out directly from the back here. Now, One thing I have to say about line out is that the ports, I'm not too sure whether I like the line out ports behind as a transportable device, because a lot of the modern amps have input and outputs in the front. Now, Enleum was an exception, right? The Enleum has the input from the back, output from the front, but most other things like, see, like this, input and output from the front. And normally for a transportable like this, you're going to pair it probably with another transportable type of amplifier. So I have mixed feelings having a line out behind. But beyond that, I'll say as the i5 internal amp is pretty competent. When I say pretty competent, because I compare it to something like this thing here. This is the Aroma Audio True Balance 100. This is a pretty good amp. You can go and take a look at my personal review of it. I'll say as it sounds identical. Exactly the same. In fact, I probably can't tell a difference no matter what device you use it to power. Be it headphones or IEMs, I really can't tell a difference. That's how close it is. Now, for, let's say I was to use something more high-end. This is the Luxury Precision EA4. I find that the EA4 itself, well, if I was to use something like earphones, small difference. But if I use something like headphones, the difference is still kind of small. I'm just showing you my headphones, yeah. But I just want to say that the EA4 versus the i5 Valkyrie, tonality-wise, is very similar. The EA4 improves the energy, improves the size of the soundstage slightly, improves, I guess, the amount of air in the sound. But it's very minor. Even though this is like a tube high-end portable amplifier, it doesn't improve the sound quality, or I say change the sound quality in a way that is a significant step up from the i5 itself. I pretty much don't think that you should spend twice the price on the EA4 if you have the i5 Valkyrie. That's my take, hot take, right? Now, if I was to compare the Enleum, things get a bit interesting. If I was to use the voltage out from the Enleum, I think that they are similar, but the Enleum has a bit more clarity. I mean, if you have seen other reviews I did before, the Enleum voltage out does have a little bit more clarity, a bit more air, a bit more soundstage, a little bit more of everything, but the tonality wise doesn't change that much. Now, if I was to use the current out, which is this big ass port here, it does change the sound signature significantly. You get a little bit more power, a little more aggressiveness, yet still having a bigger sound, a bit more tame on the high ends. It does change the sound signature a little bit, and that's because of the amplification structure there. I do think that the Enleum with the current out is an improvement if you drive planars with it, be it the Noah X or the Ner Audio. I think the Enleum has a noticeable difference, and to me, an upgrade over the i5 Valkyrie's amplifier. But the Enleum costs more than the i5 Valkyrie, so I'm not too sure whether is that a very sane choice or not, right? And lastly, I have the Mesh Kobo. And the Mesh Kobo wise, depending on your preference, it can be an upgrade or a side grade. Let me explain. The i5 Valkyrie versus the Mesh Kobo is kind of like seeing through crystal glass and seeing through, say, something like a ruby, The Mesh Kobo just feels cleaner, clearer, has a touch more perceived clarity, even though I'm not hearing any more details, and has more air. It just sounds a touch bigger, yet still goes from fragile to high energy very, very well. That's how the Mesh Kobo renders it. The i5 Valkyrie just feels like it is a bit more focused, surprisingly, versus the Mesh Kobo, and a bit more energy in the middle. It feels like the bass feels a little bit more energy there, Things just feel a bit more aggressive on the Valkyrie versus the Mesh Kobo, a little bit warmer on the Valkyrie too. And if I was to listen to certain vocal tracks, it also feels like there is a little bit more body on the i5 Valkyrie itself. And it's the type of body that, a rendition difference rather than truly fill up sound, a rendition difference. So if I was to listen to certain music, and like I listen to, let's talk about K-pop Demon Hunters. It's a very popular soundtrack now. If I was listening to your idol, for example, either device's amplification is fine to me. I don't think the Mesh Kobo is like going to change my life for it. So I'll probably stick to the Ifi Valkyrie output. Fine. I mean, the bit more air, everything, it feels a little bit nice to have that kind of clarity, but not necessary. But if I was to listen to Golden, right? Golden has this part where she sings up, 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 up until then the super high notes there. I feel that the Mesh Kobo renders those better. The amount of energy built up and clarity in the singer's voice is just more prominent, and to me, an improvement over the Ifi Valkyrie's rendition. And then when it drops down to the bridge between the two chorus for Golden, where she sounds very fragile because she talks about her patterns and stuff, I think the Mesh Kobo renders that fragile part, and then followed by the build up to the chorus from fragile to high energy better, with more air, with more depth, and with more, I guess, feelings. It just feels better to listen to Mesh Kobo. That's how I feel it. Is it really tangible? I'm not too sure. Definitely you can hear the more clarity, that crystal clear vocals of the singer. And then you hear that build up from the fragile to the energy part, which the Mesh Kobo does it better than the Valkyrie itself. Now, this is very intangible in most cases, other than the crystal clear rendition part of things. But as I say again, if you are into that kind of song, or you listen to that type of music where it builds up energy from fragile to high power, the Mesh Kobo does it better. But if you are listening to a song that is generally the same amount of energy throughout, or should I say, it's aggressive from the start to the end, I think the Mesh Kobo makes no difference. The increase of the perceived clarity is not a big deal enough to change from the Ifi Valkyrie to the Mesh Kobo. Long story short, the Mesh Kobo can be the next best thing when plugged into the Ifi Valkyrie, or it can be just a side grade, depending on who you are. So overall, I do find that the Ifi Valkyrie is a very, very good DAC amp. It does many things well. It has a lot of power inside, and the amplification is pretty good that you don't really need to plug in additional amplifier if you don't want to. Now, I'm not comparing it to desktop amplifiers, because desktop amplifiers, they are very, very good ones, and I do have them, just not with me now, right? And if I was to compare to desktop amplifiers, I think like the, I've forgotten, it's a long time since I used some of the amplifiers, but I'm pretty sure they will beat it, because they do even beat my Enleum when it comes to sound quality itself. So yeah, if you are looking at a transportable device at this price bracket, I think this is very, very, very good, very, very competent, and a very full package at it. Now, if you are looking at it as a pure DAC itself, I think there are a lot of options out there with a slight different signature, which it boils down to personal preference. I think the strength of this device really is the whole transportable package of a DAC amp, rather than just the DAC chip or just the amp chip. I really think that this is super competent of a device, works very well, and I enjoy it both it alone or plug into another amp, so I get a slightly different taste, especially with the Mesh Kobo. It really, to me, is an improvement, but to you, it may just be a side grade, depending on your own personal preference itself. Now, one last thing I want to say is that when this thing is at full power, which I charge it, it lasts a good 15 to 20 hours. I was using it non-stop, testing. It never really ran out of power for most of my tests. I only recently charged it again. At least it has lasted me more than 15 hours in a single charge. But most of the time, I'm at this low power mode. I didn't really need high power to start with, so pretty much, I think battery life is okay, or should I say above average for most modern transportables. Most of my amps don't even last that long, so great stuff. Hope you enjoyed this review, and if you have any comments, do write down below. If you'd like to see more such stuff, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye bye.